Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here this evening. My name is Brenda Venice. I'm the president of NAMI. NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I've been doing this for a long time. I have 2 children with mental illness. And I thought more than ever, we need a conversation. So I like to introduce our host of the Community Conversation of Faith on Mental Illness, Pastor Mike. I thank him very much.
Thanks, Brenda. It's good to have you here. The hard work you've been doing has been very noteworthy, and we're dealing with a topic, obviously, that's just getting started, and that is our faith factor. We need that, don't we? We have the superscription of many of our bills and currencies that say things such as, "In God we trust." Do we? And of course, we know most of America does. 90% of America believes in God, but too many are growing in their lesser allegiance to Him. And does God have something to say? Does His Word have something to say? Do certain major components of the religions of the world have something in common? Can we group together better in helping this very weak and needy and vulnerable area of our communities? And the answer is absolutely yes. Amen? You can say amen to that, or yes. Or you nod your head, yes, okay. Baptists like to say amen, but yes, smile, and you're doing that. We need each other, don't we? And for centuries, you see, there was the church that was involved with their communities that came to the assistance of the needy and the downtrodden. That's where we got the word sanctuary. Where did that come from? And now it's being changed, the word sanctuary, into something different in parts of our society. But most of our society looks at the sanctuary as something very much a safe haven, a place to go, a city of refuge, as they had in ancient times they were called. And we confess, we're one of those that have done very little. I have a son who has a schizophrenia diagnosis as well in the last year. And it's been enlightening to get involved with NAMI, enlightening to get involved with many parents and many different committees and various seminars to understand that this is a widespread issue. And we kind of silently, and sometimes not so silently, struggle with our needs that are there with our loved ones. And so hence we begin a journey here today. The National Day of Prayer is coming up next Thursday. We have a sizable group of people at different places, such as here in Fall River. They'll be meeting in 2 different locations, one at Government Center and one at a location in Roberson, to pray for things like this. And to do more than pray, but to linger in God's presence, to get to know each other better, to see how we can help. And so someone once said, people will forget many things that you may say, but they never forget how you made them feel. And people need to know how we feel about them, don't they? They need to, as we like to say in some parts, say, as we are sitting in our churches and our stained glass windows, "Here we are, you lucky sinners, come and get us." And the reality is, we need to be out there. We need to do a better job in this very, very important area that frighteningly has grown in so many different ways. And so we're grateful for that opportunity to be with Brenda and the group, and the pastors will be here quite a bit next Thursday, the National Day of Prayer for our nation, in so many different categories. One of them is the category we're talking about here. And it's very much needed for us to bathe these things before the Almighty God. Let me give this back now to Brenda as she brings us up to an understanding of some things from NAMI's perspective.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're going to have a short video about the NAMI Connection that will talk more about mental illness.
Why am I anxious all the time?
I'm feeling sad, but I don't know why. Will anyone understand if I tell them how I'm feeling?
Talk to someone who understands.
Someone just like you. NAMI Connection.
A vital link to your community.
And a key to your recovery. NAMI Connection is a free 90-minute program, all for consumers, anyone suffering with a mental illness.
One of the things that helped me get outside of myself,
everyone comes to the group with an issue, but we work. We work in the support groups. We don't just share. We share and we care and we work.
Number 7, we won't judge anyone's pain as less than our own.
Number 8, we forgive ourselves and we reject guilt.
Number 9,
we embrace humor as healthy.
Number 10, we accept we cannot solve all problems.
Number 11, we expect a better future in a realistic way.
Number 12, we will never give up hope.
Great.
The model is calibrated on teaching facilitators to empower the people who are attending the group, bring them forward, let the group do its own work. A very important part of a successful support group. And people who participate in a group process are likely to want to come back because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel that they have contributed. And that's a very important part of recovery.
we cheer for each other, we're there for each other, we console each other, and that's the power of connections.
The training that I received was thorough and intense, and in the same respect, the training that we perform for the facilitators is very thorough and intense. They're ready to go back to their states and take this to their peers and to do the wonderful work that NAMI Connection provides.
I think the model works so well because the people who run groups are so well trained and they understand the job is to bring out the experiences and the wisdom of people in the group.
A lot of the support groups that I went to before were just completely unorganized. There was no structure to the groups. And a lot of people saying, do this, and you'll get better. That's not what it's like with NAMI Connection.
As a medical professional, I'm very impressed by this program. You have the 4 charts, you've got the 12 guiding principles. You have facilitators in every group that have been trained with the same model. So there's very strong similarities. From Oklahoma to New Jersey, every group is going to be familiar to someone who understands NAMI Connection.
The program has helped me to learn that we can change our lives one day at a time. We can do it one step at a time. All we have to do is just try.
Before I came to NAMI, I was on a bus and I noticed the NAMI sign outside of the church. And I got off the bus because that particular day I had saved up all of my pills and I was going to commit suicide that afternoon. And I got off the bus and I said, well, it can wait for a few more minutes so I can see what this National Alliance on Mental Illness is. And I went in, and the people there, they didn't know what I had planned to do, but they decided to talk to me and tell me about NAMI and NAMI services. And I felt, well, these people really must care about other people who have mental illness. It doesn't seem to be just a job for them. I think I'll wait one more day before I commit suicide. So when I went home, I said, they have a support group on Saturday. And I think I'll wait one more day. I'll give it one more day. And then I went to support group. And I said, I think I'll give it one more week until the next support group. So for a few months there, I was tentatively alive. I was gonna wait for the next support group and then the next support group. And finally, I realized I wasn't thinking about it anymore.
I may not have the support from my family, but I know that I can come here and 10, 12 of you, 13, however many is here every week, that I can count on you guys for all the support I need. And I may come in here bummed out, but I know that when I leave here after the meeting, I know that I feel good. And I gotta thank you guys.
I was really depressed last week, I must say that. The good wisdom that I received last week really helped me out, and I really appreciate you all for being there for me.
I have to admit, lots of weeks I come in, I feel really bad, I feel really down, but every time when I leave, I feel good.
Sincere, uncritical acceptance really is the key. People come to the support groups never having experienced sincere, uncritical acceptance before in their lives. And it's what allows growth, it's what allows recovery. And the model is created with that in mind.
I see huge changes in people. I really do. I mean, people come in with a very sad face, very scared face. They walk out, they have a huge smile on their face.
And it's just so great to see people that have suffered in silence for so long and then come to NAMI Connections and feel a part of a family, of a group where they can come share their burdens and find strength and know that they can have hope and know that they're not alone.
Being in NAMI and hooking up with Connections, I feel whole again. I feel like I'm worth something again. I have no shame anymore. I may think about my past, but it's the illness that caused a lot of things to happen. At this point in time, okay, I'm crying because I'm happy. I'm happy that I'm in a place right now where I can help other people, where they can help me. And it's only going to get better. Connections is only going to get better.
It's all about getting people healthy in recovery and staying in recovery. Long-term recovery, and that's the goal now.
I'm at peace with myself. I accept my illness. It took me a long time. And I'd hate to see anyone else take as long as I took to accept their illness and to recover. The medications help, but NAMI Connection is what sealed the recovery.
NAMI saved my life. It saved my family. It's kept us all connected.
This is a way out of isolation and a way towards friendship and belonging again. And so for family members, we see this as a gift.
My last hospitalization, I was handed a NAMI pamphlet, and making the call to NAMI, asking for help, was my first step in recovery. And I went to my first NAMI Connection meeting, and I just was immediately hit by how positive and embracing the people were and how caring they were. It was very, very uplifting for me, and it was very life-changing. My first meeting was what really saved my life.
To find out how to get involved with the NAMI Connection Recovery Support Group Program, please contact your NAMI state organization or visit nami.org/connection.
Okay, I'm going to talk on the PowerPoint, make it very quick, on NAMI Bristol County, serving all the Bristol County area. Our education meetings are the first Monday of the month at Corrigan Mental Health, 49 Hillside Street, 4 of Mass, at 6:30 to 7:30, and it's free and it's open to the public. Some of the programs that we have, the NAMI Education and Support Group, In Our Own Voice is a unique public education presentation that offers insight into the hope and the recovery possible for people living with mental illness. Trained individuals living with mental illness lead a brief and yet comprehensive, interactive presentation about mental illness. Now, the family support group we have for families is the third Wednesday of the month. It's at First Baptist Church at 228 North Main Street in Fall River, right across the street from the YMCA. Our family-to-family program, the classes start at the end of August in 2016. My phone number is there, and the fax, and the email, and the website, and the classes fill up very quickly. Our education meetings are the first Monday of the month at Corrigan Mental Health, and they're from 6:30 to 7:30. They're open to the public, and everyone is welcome. And then every Monday we have a guest, either we have a movie night or a guest speaker. May 2nd, 2016 is our movie night, where we'll be talking about voices. Very, very good documentary. Our mission, NAMI's mission, is working with families together for change. The purpose is to help families in crisis through mutual support and sharing in experiences. It advocates for better treatment and the needs of services, including suitable and affordable housing for persons with mental illness in the Bristol County area, which I have applications in the back for housing, if anybody's interested in that. Our mission is to educate the public about mental illness and the needs of people with mental health conditions in order to combat stigma associated with mental illness, to work to increase funding for research and causes and treatment of this long, severe mental illness. And I fight very hard for this. And our missions, we have activities where we do have the speakers, and then I go to the legislative. I'll make this very quick so that we can go on to our next presentation. It's very important that people know that NAMI is out there in the community, and that we have monthly meetings, and they know my phone number, and they know the email, and most of all, they know the website, NAMIBristolCounty.org, where there's all videos of family-to-family, breaking the silence for children, which I intend to get into Fall River, because we have so many children with mental illness in our schools. So that's our end of our PowerPoint. What we're going to do is, before we start the community faith conversation, we have a speaker, our first speaker. His name is Gary, and he will come up and he'll speak. Okay, Gary.
Hi, my name's Gary. Last name's Aris, A-R-E-S. I live here in Fall River. This is my technology that I just got going, so it tells me how long I can talk. I'll just give you a brief idea of what my background is. Why am I up here? You know, what gives me the right to talk to you about mental illness and recovery? First of all, born out of a family, wonderful. This is about gene pools here, right? On my dad's side, French-Canadian, both sides of the family, came down from Montreal and the Brunswick area some years back. And I found out later on in life that my father had paranoid schizophrenia. I didn't realize that until, like late in the teen years, in my teen years, where I had already sort of become a fledgling alcoholic, right? So I started drinking at an early age. The point is that, the idea of mental illness, which I know now, I didn't know then, is that there are many symptoms of it, right? It can be drinking, can be, could be eating too much or eating not enough, and all different kinds of things. It manifests itself in different ways. But in my particular case, I found that I was born, now that I know later on in life, I'm going to go back and forth because there are the actions that happened earlier on in life that I had no clue what was going on. I'm just, this person, this young kid, kind of bobbling my way through life like young kids do, and even a young adult for that matter. And it wasn't until later on in my life, probably, I don't know, roughly, it started about 45 roughly, but I really got into a lot more depth in my own knowledge of myself and about recovery. And in particular, the multiple facets of my we'll call it illness, being an alcoholic, also was ADHD, which is that, hyperactive disorder, right, and lack of attention. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. You don't become an alcoholic by just saying, well, that's a nice idea, let me just go have a drink. This is obsessive compulsive behavior. This is when the obsession takes over and the compulsion takes over, even though you go, no, I can't do this, I can't do this. Interesting the way it manifests itself. And there are other things that went on in my life that were just so clear. I look back on it, that little moment I just had, it was like this rerun of a film that just went on in my head, how everything becomes clear later on. But at the time it was just so confusing, just kind of bobbling one's way through life. And here's the good part, that I started drinking probably 12, 13, 14, whatever it was, going to high school and all those kinds of things. And I remember, and I stopped when I was 28. This is where the good stuff starts. That it happens. Every time I start talking about it, it comes up. Oh, that's gratitude, okay? Gratitude is that on June 2nd, 1978, there was this act of divine intervention that came into my life. No pearly gates, no burning bushes, no way you have to build an ark, none of that stuff. It was just me contacting AA, and it happened to be my ark, possibly. I never use whatever metaphor you'd like. And so that day, that 28-year-old human being man who had no clue what was going on and was on I talk to myself and I tell myself not to do this, but anyways, the stuff that's going on is somebody did speak to me, in fact. Now, this is not a religious thing. This is like my experience, right? I remember being high and drinking on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm listening to rock Boston from years back, right? And all of a sudden, all that music in my headphones on, blaring music, and I'm just, it stopped. It kept going, but over that were the words, let me get these out quick. If you don't stop, you will die. That happened. And I was like, trying to talk myself out of it. So, those kinds of things are interesting, and gee whiz, how did you manage to get out of that? I'll tell you what. This is where mental illness, where the rubber meets the road, and the fact is that recovery from mental illness, never mind whether it's doing pot or doing drugs or doing this or doing that, whatever those manifestations are, the symptoms, working diligently and really, first of all, finding help like NAMI. And other organizations, finding the right kind of help. And at that particular time in my life, it happened to be AA. There are many other associations, many other groups, many other paths to go, whether or not they're religious, whether or not they're non-religious, whatever they might be. But it's so important for the person on that path. And I can speak lightly about people that, family. I have a son who's schizophrenic. And he's psychotic. I don't know if he'll ever see help, but nonetheless, for both sides, for the person going through recovery to get the best knowledge they can. And what's good about that today, this may not sound like it's good, but it is good. I have a sense of depth of this because of it started in 1978, so I got to see what the thinking was back then, and the thinking today is much better. The thinking of science and the thinking of doctors and the thinking what we know about the mind and how the mind works, and there's a lot more knowledge there that that has been built upon over time. So we're in much better shape now than we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago for that matter. So from a recovery standpoint, I must say that the person going through it, if they can make a commitment to themselves to just keep putting one foot forward, and one of the things that happened with me, I have to say, is the persistence piece of it, the persistence of recovery, no matter what goes on, no matter what happens, no matter if the balls of fire come at your feet and whatever the case might be, just keep going. I remember calling, I had this thing called, a person called a sponsor, this person in AA. And after 5 years, I remember calling the person and saying, it was a rainy night, still feeling icky. Icky is a polite word. But at that point I said, when does this get better? After 5 years. So it's really important for everyone to know the person going through it and the people that are supporting the person going through it, that there isn't any, presto change or bring your car or your human being in for an oil change and out they come the other side and everything's going to be okay. That's just, I'm not sure if that happens with anyone. Let me say that my personal experience is that it's a long, involved path, and probably one of the best things that I've done for myself, or anybody could do for themselves, for that matter, is to gain knowledge. Really important. Knowledge and action, I'd say the two most important things. The knowledge that can be gained from this organization or other organizations, you can go on the line, right? Which I've done many times, and through these decades, I've gained a lot of knowledge. And about a year or so ago, I went and I said, gee, what would it be like to be a newbie right now, trying to figure out what's going on? And here's the good news. Huge amounts of information. Huge. The bad news is huge amounts of information. To be able to look at it, and I looked at it, and I'm very knowledgeable about many topics here, because I've studied them. And I looked at it and went, oh my God. Oh my whatever. So the fact of the matter is that there isn't any magical cure. That's important to know. Having support around is very important. So if we can get a sense of community, whether it be in a church, whether it be in a group, whether it be NAMI, having community around and getting a sense that life is going to be okay. It doesn't always feel that way, especially on the caregiver side, the family side, and you kind of look at that going, hey, you're not okay. When are you going to ever get okay? Doesn't feel that way. But what can happen is that the support, the people that are going through it can get a sense of their own development and take responsibility for themselves, so that it can take the burden off of the other people. So that if they both have that same knowledge, what really can help that, we'll call it the caregiver slash family slash wife, whatever you want to call it, the other people. It's really important for them to be able to look and understand what's real and what's not. For that person, what's happening with that person, what real or imagined life is happening within that person. Because sometimes they can project stuff on us, and I can project things on myself for that matter, that it is what a waste of time. All right, I got 3 minutes left. And I want to leave you with a couple of things. I'll just, as I said it before, I'm going to repeat myself. Knowledge knowledge and action, very important. And continuing down those paths. It doesn't have to be wide. In other words, you don't have to get a PhD to understand all of this. If you can understand what the diagnosis is of the individual, get a good handle on what that is, kind of dig down into it and understand it, and also understanding the medications that are involved. That really, really helps. And then so you take that knowledge, understand what I would go through as a human being, what everybody goes through as a human being. We all want to get better. We want to be the best person that we can be. So how does one person, a person that's sort of in pieces right now, how do they come together so then they can move on a path to becoming whole and to becoming more healthy? So being able to understand one's own self and this other person at the same time, and somehow, if you can join hands and move forward, that'd be awesome. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be around a little later on, so if you have any other questions, we can.
Okay, stigma. Stigma is the most important thing that we have to try to do away with it. How terrible it is. People that are worried about stigma, they don't get the help they need. It's just a terrible thing that you have that stigma where people just don't even want other people to know about it. So I'm going to show a very small video with Glenn Close about stigma.
Henry Boyd Jenkins. I have a diagnosis of schizophrenia.
I had depression. I had a miserable, horrible life for many years.
I also happen to have been diagnosed bipolar 1 disorder. I'm also someone who suffers from chronic schizophrenia.
I suffer from borderline personality disorder.
Major depression and anxiety.
I live with bipolar disorder.
My dad suffered from depression and anxiety.
My sister has bipolar disorder and my nephew has schizophrenia.
Mental illness strikes with a two-edged sword. On one side are the symptoms and the stress and disability.
My dad committed suicide because of those feelings of anxiety and depression.
So I went from practicing law on that Friday to being in bed for a number of months.
On the other side, though, is community's reaction to illness, the prejudice and discrimination makes up stigma.
Stigma happens because there are members of a group that are feared, despised, loathed.
Stigma sucks.
Stigma has impacted my own confidence.
I just thought I was abandoned, ignored by people. I've come to learn that it's a very common occurrence with people with mental illness.
The stigma, the version of what it is to be mentally ill, has cost me 2 of my siblings out of 3.
It's woven into the fabric of our society, and it stems back centuries, really, when mental illness was considered a character flaw.
There's such a bad stigma attached with having a mental illness or showing a symptom of it, and it's just not okay. Not in the high schools, not at all, actually.
Every life is touched by mental illness.
It doesn't matter if you're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, you're young, you're old. It affects all of us.
In very personal ways.
People who have a mental illness are excluded and treated unfairly. And this is because people are afraid of mental illness.
In the long run, stigma produces a kind of isolation that grows from fear.
As a kid, my dad would vanish into the ether. No one said anything. I learned later, no one was allowed to say anything.
Silence helps perpetuate the stigma surrounding mental health and suicide.
The conversation simply needs to start.
When we just open up the conversation and begin speaking about it, it's amazing what can happen.
It's okay to talk about it.
Talk to others.
Talk about these things.
Talk out loud, without fear.
Because as long as stigma exists, it prevents the society as a whole from incorporating these illnesses into a dialogue.
With advocacy, we can help educate, inspire, and inform people.
I co-founded Bring Change to Mind because I figured if my family was this way, there were millions of other families just like us.
Organizations like Bring Change to Mind are vitally important in our anti-stigma landscape.
And the less stigma, the more people will seek care and get the treatment that they need.
As millennials, we know the power our group can bring to cause social change.
And by connecting with millennials in social media
To end the stigma of mental illness,
we can make a real difference.
What they do and what efforts they take on really will move that needle of stigma and move toward the goal of ending stigma toward mental illness in contemporary society.
We have to be the generation to really normalize and get people talking about it, because if they don't, nothing's going to change, and we need it to change.
Thanks to Bring Change to Mind, I no longer feel like I'm an outcast.
And I think that BC2M is doing an awesome job of connecting people. And connecting people is what it's all about.
Having a mental illness is not a sentence to a bleak and painful life. You can have a good life. There is hope.
I'm here today because I got the right help, and you can do it too.
Life is good. Okay, it's even wonderful.
A lot of credit goes to Bring Change to Mind.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker, Pastor Mike.
It's interesting that the anachronism of the word NAMI represents something very particular in its historical context. Never alone. Imagine the very first letter representing the phrase never alone would truly be the commodity that these people who are in desperate crying out would have. As I've gone and traveled around with different eyes, open heart, a greater vision in the last year, by our Creator's design, He thrust me into a world that I had known about but knew little of. And there and only then did, through personal experience of one of my kids, open up the Pandora's box of seeing what's out there, and it's a lot, isn't it? It's way too much for 32 beds or 64 beds or 158 beds. They are needed. We need as much of that type of help as we can get. And that's something Brenda is fighting for and is, by God's good grace, will make progress with. But it's a community's effort that must come to bear. It's where clergy that have these almost secret prayer vigils by themselves needs to become more collated into the community, never alone. Among people who care, people know when you care. You linger longer in their presence. You do something for them besides give them some bucks. You give them some advice. You give them some time. And you give them your heart. As one great writer recently said that we mentioned, people will forget many things that you say. They never forget how you made them feel. People know how you feel about them, don't they? You can tell from the voice inflections. You can tell from the word selections. You can tell from the time that you spend with them. The next letter, M, meaningful discussions. Meaningful, don't miss that. Meaningful is what we had this past fall with NAMI. We cried our share of times as we entered a world that was, well, so challenging and at times diabolical. What I mean by that is not the superscription written above any person's life, but the general category of darkness that has entered America that wasn't there in its past. This is escalating. In its habitat, the habitation where it's found its roots is in greater selected places of this world and certain spots of America. It's not just, if you will, everywhere and anywhere and all everywhere. It's It has pockets of people who have been changed somehow, sometimes overnight. Scattered everywhere, yes, but pockets of people that have, something's gone wrong. And it's gone wrong from a number of reasons. The medications that are needed, to be sure, but the touch of the Master's hand, the touch of God, the touch of caring people, the prayer warriors, the scriptural advices, the meaningful words of wisdom needs to be administered to these people. And then NAMI, of course, I will not give up. I can still remember going to those sessions and them hugging us too, and they would tell us, and it revolutionized some of our thinking at first, don't give up. There is that tendency for many to throw in the towel, isn't there? So we know there's an escalation of the illness. We know it's worse in certain locations than others. We know it's a complex issue that gravitates towards many facets of this amazing physiological being that we are, our minds. Someone said the greatest, last, partially discovered frontier. In all of our scientific prowess and in all of our developmental knownness, we are just now trying to understand the mind. The mind is an amazing inner space where we are still trying to figure out things, and it was interesting in our NAMI meetings where they had manuals this thick, doctor's reports this thick, scientific stuff of various kinds of all great varieties. They would include, this is a new frontier we're just beginning to really probe. Is it any wonder that we need a God? We need the God. We need help from the Supreme Being to enter this picture in a greater way. Is it simply a physiological matter only and has nothing else to do with the other two parts that makes you who you are? Physical, mental, and spiritual. And the answer, of course, we've always been a trichotomist. Everybody, almost any religion of all the over 200 religions of the world, we're all trichotomist. We know there is a supreme being that must be there to help us. And he's there. Jesus would go and find people who were out of their mind in different ways. It's a big topic. It had different categories. We don't have time for that tonight. But the clergy are beginning to harness this topic, and on June 2nd at New Hope, we will be meeting. And we'll be meeting with other pastors, some coming down from a place known as Scroon Lake Word of Life, who will be coming there to assist us. But this cannot just be a symposium, a forum, a once-a-year discussion. It has to really enter the blood vein of our community in a greater way. Next Thursday, we mean to do business with that by praying. And we expect, as we have each year, to have hundreds present, and we'll be doing that again this year. The flyers are there. It's praying for this, that, and the other thing. But we are including this new part in greater way, this much needed area of mental health issues. We need prayer, don't we? And we don't just need prayer in an isolated, occasional way. We need it in a big way. Christ said, "Come unto me, all you that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." God can reach in. Let's sing a song. You're in church. You're supposed to sing a song, are you not? And we're going to sing a great song that will soothe your heart. And if you don't know it, you'll love it. And it comes into play to help us see we need God. It's fascinating, the statistical analysis of those who come to God. My son is one of those. He was wild beyond imagination. Turned overnight into something unrecognizable. A year and a half ago. He attacked me more than on one occasion. One time almost knocking me out with a punch to the ear and to the head. I can go on to all kinds of horrible stories, and so could you. And yet he's meeting God again. And we're giving him time to rest in his presence. And he's healing. And so far he's been 7 months without medications. Stunning. Not for everybody necessarily. Medications are absolutely needed. But are they forevermore? Are they the only answer? Can God come through and heal people? And the scriptures are replete with resounding yes. But you got to go to God in a serious way. And as the deer, let's sing this together. Some of you will know it, some of you will just learn it. But what a great song to help us understand what we're talking about as the deer. The deer needs to meet you where you're at, and God says, I'm there. As a deer goes to a brook to be fed, so must you. The deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to imagine going to God with greater intensity on a daily basis. You that's the only place to go. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after The disciples were waiting, and they were troubled, and they were almost mad with anticipation of what was getting ready to happen to them. They'd be hunted like dogs. They would be public enemy number one. They would live in catacombs for decades, in the desert, in the mountains, and they would have, as James would say, but very little to put on their backs, not even clothing to be changed into. Naked, destitute, they would say in James. How'd you like that life? And yet God came to their rescue, and he's able to come to the rescue of any and everybody. He said these words before he went to the cross: let not your heart be overly troubled. Believe in me as you believe in God. Peace I leave with you. My peace I can give to you. Not as the world giveth I unto you, let not your heart be overly troubled, neither let it be afraid. I met too many people last year in my voyage that started a year ago in this world that are fearful. I was one of them. At times I wrestle with that as well as you do. But I find that what I have, as NAMI would say, you're not alone, really. I hope you're not. You're among people who care. Where do you get that from? Family, hopefully so. But you need more than that. That's primary. But you need more than that, don't you? You need a faith group. You need some big brother and sisters in your life that maybe aren't part of your family. You need somebody who looks you in the eye to have meaningful discussions and say to you, don't give up. How about you? In just a few minutes, you're going to be given an opportunity to interact, ask questions on the faith factor, the scriptural factor, to make comments about your own voyage that you're on. The ship sailed long ago, didn't it? Some of you, it's been around. I can't believe Brenda's. I think of Brenda and her family background and what they have been through. And I couldn't believe her testimony of her and her family, her husband, and it gave us hope instantly. And she travels a certain road of healing. And now she's a leader. And she is a critical piece of the puzzle of Massachusetts. And she's in our backyard. She didn't give up. She had meaningful times. She wasn't alone. And she went where she needed the help the most, to her God, to her friends, and of course to the doctors. Aren't you glad for doctors? We don't throw them out like a few religions, no more than a few throw out the doctors. Most religions don't. Now, we're going to move on here for your time of interaction, and God bless you as you do that.
Okay, our third speaker. When a family goes through this, like myself, I think I've been at this for like 25 years. I have 2 children with mental illness. And the heartbreak that we go through, I have a family member who's going to tell you her story. Her name is Annette.
Hello everyone. My name is Annette, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about my son and about how mental illness has affected the lives of my husband and myself. We have been married for over 40 years. We have 2 children, a daughter who lives in Florida with her husband and my 2 grandsons, and my son, being mentally ill, who is 40 years old and who now lives with us. When my son was younger, just starting school, he was found to have a learning disability and was in special needs classes throughout grammar and high school. At age 17, while still in high school, he was diagnosed as bipolar and was placed on medication to control his mood swings and depression. At that time, we found it hard to understand why he was feeling so sad. Then began the long hours spent waiting in Corrigan's Crisis Center with him, while the team talked with him to calm him down. Bob and I can't count how many trips we made to the psychiatric hospitals throughout Massachusetts to visit him until he was well enough to come home. When he was older, he was placed in the group home system. The first one he went to was very good for him. He had a part-time job, and they taught him responsibility and life skills. He moved on to 3 more group homes, but the last one he was forced to move from for his behavior. Because of his behavior, he was becoming aggressive. From there, he went on to live in a rooming house where he had his bedroom, shared a small kitchen and bath with 3 other tenants. It was there that he was introduced to drugs and the street life. After that, trying to maintain an apartment became a nightmare. He would leave the door to his apartment open, only to have food and radios stolen. People would crash on his couch and do drugs. He would call us continually and ask us for food, telling us he was hungry, and tell us that he needed to see my husband because someone had threatened to break his arm or beat him up. By association with these people, he ended up going to jail for stealing to support his drug habit. He has since been living with us since his release. Our home has been broken into 3 times. Television was taken. My mother's jewelry that had been handed down to me was gone. My jewelry. It was never recovered. He substituted his drug habit and replaced it with scratch tickets, buying his girlfriend, who's also mentally ill, gifts. We do not trust him to be left in the house alone and are forever vigilant of where he is and what he's doing while in our presence. My husband and I have not been on a vacation for 3 years now, because we have nowhere that he could go and stay while we would be gone. Right now, he is currently employed part-time, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, and he is making money. He puts some of his pay away in the savings account on payday. He wants to move into an apartment with his girlfriend next year. Mental illness affects everyone around you. Friends, family, strangers. They all say they wish they could do better. And one day I hope it will be. All we can do as his parents is support him and guide him like we've been doing all his life. What will happen in the future is uncertain. All we can do is pray. God bless.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, before I start conversation with you, and this is what we need, a conversation. Start a conversation about mental illness. Before we do that, we have one more speaker. It's the caregivers. How well we need this sometimes when we have people, our loved ones that are disabled and they can't care for themselves. So these people are going to come up and talk to us very shortly. They'll tell about their program and what people need. And then after that, we'll do the conversation.
Hi, my name is Elsa. I'm the case manager for Caregiver Homes, and this is Monique. She's the RN. We're just going to say briefly, we can click here. Okay. I don't know. I can't. So I'm going to tell you how it works a little bit to become a caregiver. Basically, if you have someone that you are caring for, a loved one with a disability, it could be anyone from your spouse, as long as you're not legally married. You can be a spouse, it can be a sibling, it could be an aunt, uncle, friend that you're caring for. Someone who has, again, either mental illness, some disability, some other form of disability, an elderly, or if you have a child that is 16 years old, there is, and she'll explain a little bit better on that. A 16-year-old, a parent can't care for the child because by law you're obligated to take care of your child till they're 18 years old and they age out. However, if you have a sibling or you have a spouse, a significant other that's taking care of that child of yours, they can become a caregiver and receive a stipend for the care. If you have, until that child turns 18, when the child's 18, the parent, as long as they don't have legal guardianship, they can now become the caregiver of that person that they're caring for. If you are, the criteria is you need to have the consumer, which is the person with the disability or the mental illness, would need to be on Mass Health. You do get a stipend that gets paid through Mass Health. And actually Monique here is going to tell you exactly the criteria you're going to need to become, or actually be eligible for the program.
Okay. So part of our program is that they have to live together. It's a 24-hour-a-day supervision. In order to be part of our program, the consumer, whether they have mental or physical limitations or impairments, we have different tiers. We have a tier 1, which is someone that needs some cueing and supervision, can't quite live alone, but can do a lot of the tasks with prompting. And they look at bathing, dressing, toileting, ambulation in the home as the major things, along with toileting. That's what Mass Health uses as categories. A tier 2 is someone that, if there was no family to care for them, they would end up in a nursing home. So our program keeps these loved ones where they want to be, which is in the community with family. So someone that needs physical assistance in 2 or more areas of bathing, dressing, toileting, eating, ambulation in the home, along with a behavior. If they do not have a behavior such as wandering, socially inappropriate, verbal or physically abusive, those kind of things, they would need 3 hands-on skills. The reason our program is such a value to the community is, first of all, your loved one's staying home. Most of us know someone that is caring for a loved one and isn't getting compensated at all, but had to leave their job to support this loved one. So again, they get paid a stipend, whether it's $20-something a day if they're tier 1, to $40-something a day, which it adds up at the, as you think about it, you get paid twice a month. So you can be getting $300 to $600 every 2 weeks.
Non-taxable.
Yeah, and it's a stipend through Mass Health, so it is non-taxable, non-reportable, which is another benefit. Another benefit is that you're assigned a nurse and a social worker, and you get visits once a month, which is another help. If you have any emergencies, any questions, you can contact your team. We assist with teaching, we do referrals, we do recommendations, we also help with advocacy for people that just don't know how to get their needs met. So we support the consumer, we support the families through all the different facets of whatever they're going through. So it is a nice little program out there, for anyone that is caring for a loved one, okay?
Yeah.
And we have everything back there, because I know it's a lot of information at once, and we don't want to bombard you, okay?
If you have any questions or concerns later, you can ask. We'll be back there, and you can just come up to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions or concerns.
Okay?
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're here to make the conversation. So what we're going to do is, there's a mic there. I'm going to ask one question, and then I'll ask the question, you think about it, you go to the mic, and it's just a conversation. There's nothing wrong, right, wrong answer. Okay, what does mental health mean to you? That's the question. This is what it is, a conversation. What does mental health mean to you? Who wants to get up and answer that question?